Good morning, everybody. My name is Brydie Lear. I'm Global Head of People Analytics at ING Bank. So I'm here to talk a little bit about cross-functional analytics strategies or business models, or enterprise-wide analytics business models or strategies, because we are now part of one. Since November last year, I joined the analytics leadership team, and we have a cross-functional strategy. So I'm going to share a little bit about what kind of choices we made in ING and what kind of benefits or challenges that brings to us in people analytics. So when I was preparing for this speech, I did a little bit of research to see, what is out there around kind of enterprise-wide analytics approaches. And to be honest, I couldn't find much. A little bit from McKinsey, a little bit from Gartner. So I emailed David Green. I thought that's the best place to start for some research, particularly around how many of HR analytics teams are part of these cross-functional strategies. And he said, well, to be honest, I didn't touch that right. He said, not many, to be honest. So I guess I wanted to start with how many people in this room have an organization that has a cross-functional or global analytics team or strategy? Hands high so that I can see. So 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe 5. So not many. And keep your hand up if that includes people analytics or HR analytics. 3. Okay, so we're on the right track here. So I'll share with you a little bit about the choices that we've made. I was reflecting on why is it that there isn't so much out there about enterprise analytics, and I think it's just a strategic choice. And strategic choices always come based on your business context, based on your risk profile, based on your maturity. So I'll share with you a little bit about what we've done in ING. This is ING, just to give you a little bit of context, 54,000 employees about 25% again in contingent workers in 40 countries, just to give you a little bit of the scope. We have around 1,000 HR professionals. So we've been on our people analytics journey for around 5 years now. I always show this picture of mountains because, to be honest, it's an uphill slog building this capability. Let's be very honest with ourselves. And it's not a linear maturity growth. It kind of goes in waves, and we call them chapters. And each chapter brings new challenges. So we started 4 or 5 years ago with just 2 people in the team, and we're now about 17 people in my team. The first phase, we started really small. We used external resources. We wanted to learn and learn really quickly. Then we spent a couple of years investing in building the capability internally, so hiring talent, building infrastructure, working on our data, working on education. And then in about 2017, I joined the HR management team. We became a formal global COE within our HR. And there we really started to gain momentum in terms of delivering strategic insights. And now, just last year, I joined the analytics leadership team, and that's what I'll talk about a little bit more about. And that brings new challenges. So that's why we're still not at the top of the peak yet. I noticed those guys look a little bit creepy. My data scientists aren't as creepy as that, I promise. So in ING, we genuinely believe that to be successful with our Think Forward strategy, we have to become a data-driven organization. Now, the reasons for that are twofold. The first one is to understand and anticipate our customers' needs better, obviously. And the second part is because our vision for the future of banking has a kind of digital platform as the heart of the business model. And if you think about those really world-class platform companies, Google, Alibaba, Amazon, they just have superior data collection capacity, superior data analytics capacity, and superior data translation capacity. So we believe that to be successful as a bank in the future, we really need that digital platform at the core of our business model, and therefore we need to be a data-native organization. So that's very easy to say, but what does that take? And that's why we've launched a kind of global capability building program that I will speak a little bit more to in a moment. So we have a twofold mission. Not only do we want to kind of accelerate and scale our analytics delivery across the bank, and really make sure that we keep the bank safe, and that we do analytics in a safe way. because modeling becomes more and more complex, and there's a bit of a lack of regulation out there. So we really need to make sure that we keep things safe for our customers. But we also believe that to accelerate, everybody in ING needs to be able to use data, to access data, to use data, to be able to translate that data. So that has a big kind of people capability building. So we've defined data fluency as a distinctive people capability across the bank. So we're arranged across kind of 9 global capability domains in analytics. People is one of them, which made me extremely proud. But you can imagine they're kind of capability areas that run across the bank. So they're very specific to finance, but I think you can make parallels in your organizations. So obviously financial crime, risk, customer intelligence, they're the kind of topics that run across the bank, finance, people. And these are supported by global analytics chapters. So our data scientists and data engineers are in technical chapters, and I'll explain a little bit more about that. And we're looking at a kind of location strategy in terms of where are we locating those technical talent to help these central COEs. They've set up a core team to work on all the kind of enablers for the COEs, and I'll go a little bit more into the activities that they're delivering. We can see some of the topics. And obviously, we're investing a lot in model risk management, and that's kind of our second and third line risk management, because we really need to make sure we know what we're doing when we're accelerating our analytical capabilities. So they're setting up a whole model risk governance. So how do we manage models? How do we classify models? How do we categorize them? Who owns the different stages of the model life cycle so that we really understand what we're doing? So part of this strategy is delivering activities across these 7 areas, and central to that is a big change program. So I'll just give you a couple of examples in terms of building people capabilities. We've established one job career framework for all the roles related to data analytics. We've launched a global analytics academy, and that has all different learning journeys within that, not only for the technical talent, but also for the roles around data science. So a business sponsor role, so that business sponsors understand what kind of trade-offs are involved in an analytics project. And that really started with our board. So our board have gone through training, and that rolls down through our leadership ranks. And then we also have a translator training, which is for those roles around the data science teams. I'll share a little bit more about how we're applying that in the HR domain. But that's really about building the capability broadly across the organization. We're rationalizing our analytics technology and platforms. We have 3 Hadoop clusters, which just doesn't make sense. And we really want to make sure that the state-of-the-art kind of technology is accessible to everyone. So not just specific analytics teams. And that has advantages, but it also has challenges in terms of the data ingestion pipelines, etc. So this one is really my favorite. We're looking at a common methodology for how you quantify value in terms of analytics use cases. We'll have a common backlog across those 9 global capability domains, because I find in my role, one of the biggest challenges is how do I demonstrate the value that we're creating with our people analytics insights. And I thought that was unique to HR, but thankfully it's a challenge for all analytics teams. So I'll share a little bit more about that. In terms of data management, we have data lakes, but we really need to accelerate the data ingestion roadmaps, particularly cross-functionally. So yeah, that's something we're also working very closely together with our CDOs on, so that we have a common strategy, because there's no point having all these fancy analytical models if there's no fuel to run them. In terms of partnerships, we're looking at how can we accelerate building our analytical capabilities with strategic partnerships, so startups, a little bit like we do with fintechs already. Some of the challenges there are obviously procurement, data, legal, risk kind of conditions of working with startups within GDPR. So we're also looking at how can we make sure that we have protocols so that we can work with these smaller vendors and really start accelerating and have co-investment in the latest technologies. Last but not least, we're setting up an organization model that I've already described, also a way of working, reporting mandates, et cetera, et cetera. So that's really a big change for us because we were all just part of our local businesses before, but now we're part of a common analytics model. So how does that help us in people analytics? So this is our vision that we want to, that our people decisions are driven by facts. The way we do that, obviously, is to turn data into actionable insights to create that business value. So we've chosen specific aspects of business value we're looking to unlock that's specific to our strategic priorities and people priorities. And we focus on 3 areas in my team, in people analytics. We want to embed analytics in the way we do our HR business and our people business, so that it's not something extra, it's just part of our decision-making and our design, et cetera, in HR. We build HR's capabilities. I think we all have long discussions about that and what's the best way to do that, so I'll share a little bit about how we're doing that and how this combined analytics framework helps us with that. And obviously, we want to unlock those business insights. So how can we leverage from this ING analytics strategy? In terms of embedding analytics processes, the advantage that it brings us is that common technology and access to data. So we already, I think we only joined the Global Analytics Unit in November, and we already have 3 use cases where we're having cross-functional teams together tackling a business problem, which has a heavy people element. So we already see that we have a lot more access to kind of cross-functional data sets in this model. So that really helps us to accelerate and leverage those insights. At the end of the day, we're just looking to bend that value curve, the bank, by combining forces. In terms of building HR's capabilities, it's really helping me to hire, develop, and retain data scientists and engineers. I think in people analytics, we generally play in that space that's not big data, but at the same time, we do need complex programming skills. We need behavioral scientists with programming skills, and that's a difficult profile to hire and then develop and have career paths for. So this really helps me because there's mentoring, development, exchange in data scientists that I just didn't have from my small COE. I'm a relatively small COE. Some of our business analytics teams are anywhere up to 100 people. So the other part that it really helps us with is building our HR capability. I think that's something we are all a little bit challenged by. We've done a lot of e-learnings, we've done a lot of trainings, and we're just not seeing the speed in change in terms of HR becoming a data-driven organization. So this is also helping us to leverage a little bit on the trainings. Now, I know everybody likes to dive into how you develop HR people, so I put an example up for you. These are some of the learning journeys for the different roles we've defined. There's more roles than this, but just as an example, and this is just the kind of classroom training. I'll show you the translator learning journey. But we're really being very explicit in what kind of skills and capabilities and how you can develop those to the entire organization. So we have just put 40 HR people through the translator training. It finishes today. What I heard yesterday was that they're very challenged. It's extremely challenging in terms of the analytical training that's included. And what they really like is that it's common across the bank. So if you're a marketing expert or a relationship manager or an HR professional, you all do the same translator training, so they like that. The only thing that we did was we adapted it with an HR use case so that they can at least relate it to their own world. And the second thing is, after this 2-day training that they start with, there's a whole learning journey for them afterwards. And what we kind of aim to do here is make sure that we have translators in most of our HR markets and most of our COEs. And they will be expected afterwards to be part of my global community of analytics and to learn by doing. So they don't just go to the nice training and then go back to their job. They are expected to co-develop analytical solutions together with us. So that's the aim, but the first block has gone through, so I'll let you know if we're successful. So last but not least, what it has brought is a real challenge to us on what value are we creating. I think it was a bit of a surprise for me that I was really focused on HR for HR. Now, I wouldn't have admitted that before I started getting challenged by my new analytics boss. So we realized we needed a lot crisper value definition of analytical insights in the people domain create. And we need to be much more critical on our use case selection. And this is really on the advanced side. Of course, also descriptive analytics has its value, but this is where the advanced analytics unit is really looking into. So we've delivered a lot of solutions in terms of our analytical insights. And when you put all these on the table and you say to your stakeholders, did we do a good job? They all kind of said, wow, you've delivered a lot of very good insights, but they're kind of one-off projects. So we really need to go from kind of data analysis to scalable, integrated, embedded analytical insights. And we really need to prioritize. So we're working on that as a kind of next step in our maturity. So if you ask me, does a cross-functional analytical strategy help us accelerate and leverage to the next level of maturity in people analytics? I would say yes, but it brings some pretty unique challenges as well. And I think we really need to prepare ourselves for those as people analytics leaders, because I do believe this is coming. One day we won't even talk about cross-functional analytics strategies. It will just be part of our business model, but for now, I do think it's coming in a lot of organizations. So it really helps us to leverage resources and access to data, but there are some other challenges that it brings in terms of aligning my HR and my business stakeholders. That's a new challenge because they come at the problems from completely different perspectives. But it will help us to at least combine business and HR perspective a lot more and create value for the bank. So this is one quote that I thought was really appropriate. So it's really a hybrid model is the best. It's because if you centralize all of your analytics efforts, then you really miss the local market knowledge. So it's less about kind of hierarchical control in terms of your analytics efforts and more about networked cooperation, which really helps you kind of leverage on the collective. So on the personal level, I thought I'd share a little bit about what I learned over the last 6 months or so, that maybe I wish I'd got started a little bit earlier. So this is my advice for you if you haven't yet joined these cross-functional analytics strategies. So what I got a lot of comfort from was that we're not alone. I thought that we were rather immature in terms of our capabilities in analytics in HR, and we are. But then still, the more mature analytics teams struggle with the same things. So my colleague in wholesale banking, so the corporate banking advanced analytics team, he even hired an accountant because he was so irritated with the fact that the value he was creating with his analytical models wasn't acknowledged by our finance colleagues. So even if he increased revenues, they were like, yeah, but there's all these market conditions and blah, blah, blah. It's not because of your model. So they struggle with the same kind of things, a different manifestation, but indeed they struggle. They struggle with data access and integration. They struggle to productize the models because it's so complex, our infrastructure in our corporate organizations. So I got a lot of comfort from that because I thought I really felt alone in the HR organization, struggling with some of these very technical aspects. So my advice is go and reach out to your analytics colleagues in other parts of the bank. They are of your organizations. They are inherently interested in the application of this in the people space because they're all employees. So they will help you and will give you advice on some of these things from a more mature level. So although all analytics teams are now created equally, we're not all equal, right? We know that. It's a little bit the bane of HR. So this is all very nice, but once we're part of a central model and we're allocating resources in terms of data scientists or data priorities in the ingestions for the data lakes, HR is always down here, risk, finance, cybersecurity is always up here. So I take that not as discouraging, I take that as encouragement. It's really important, now that I'm on the table, that I am really helping the stakeholders to understand why this is of value as well. But this is a reality. So this is where the challenges come. And last but not least, this was also a little confronting to me. We are quite mature in terms of our HR analytics journeys, I believe, amongst European corporates. So yeah, and in HR, any analytical insight people are very amazed by, because we're not traditionally an analytical function. So we went from being a big fish in a small pond to a very small fish in a very, very big pond. And what I realized is that we need to stop hiding in HR. We are trying to add business value. And of course, we're looking at that from a people perspective. But I really wish that a couple of years ago, I had gone out there and spoken more to business stakeholders. I think I focused a lot on building a capability and awareness internally in HR. I focused a lot on our HR priorities. But there's also a lot of people priorities out there, so you need to balance those interests. So that's my encouragement to you. Make sure we don't just hide in HR. It's easy. We're familiar with it. We know what we're doing when it comes to recruitment, but we need to challenge ourselves to get out a little bit broader than that. I think that's the basics of my story, so it's good to ask questions.
Thank you very much, Brydie. So we've got a little bit of time for questions. Any questions for Brydie over there?
Yeah, I've got one.
Just wait for the microphone a sec.
Oh, sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's easier.
I'm sure you can.
Hi, thank you. First, I think that was a great presentation. I think a lot of us can really relate to a lot of the content that you had up there and a lot of the challenges and what it sounds like is a really interesting journey that you've had for your team. One of the questions I have is, at the very outset of this, where did that proposal come from? Where was that something that was pushed through HR? Was that something pushed through the central team saying, ooh, we need to involve HR as part of our central analytics team? Or really, who started pushing that?
That's a good question, actually, because I was really happy that we were identified as one of the core capabilities. I think it was a combination of things. So we've done a very good job at kind of building maturity in this area. And I'm obviously part of the HR management team. So we're really at that strategic level. I think that helps. We're already on the kind of leadership radar in that respect. Secondly, I think in ING, fundamental to our belief is that we need to build our people capabilities. So of course, why would you not apply advanced analytics to that as well? So I think it was a bit of a combination of things. Our Chief Innovation Officer is very focused on the employee experience and how it relates to customer experience. So I think, yeah, just all those things came together. And it obviously makes sense because people is also something that cuts across the bank. So it's a global capability. So I think it's a combination. Yeah. But it's not like I had to beg to be, please, can I be part of this? So that's good news, right? Yeah.
Other questions for Brydie? Yep, right here.
Hi, I'm Damien Tacono from British American Tobacco. I'm actually you at British American Tobacco, so we have a global analytics function and I'm the HR and people analytics lead. So I have about 1,000 questions for you. I'll just ask one now. In terms of, can you elaborate a little bit in terms of the funding model that you have for the global analytics function and how the use cases are developed and therefore how you bring HR traditionally from the bottom, let's say, up to somewhere where it's seen as valuable and gets its share of the funding?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So this only came from the end of November. So the start of November, this new model was launched. So it's really early days, but one of my first questions was, okay, who's paying for the for the resources, who hires and fires me, therefore is accountable for my delivery. So the way we do it in ING is we have dual reporting lines. So I hierarchically report to the CHRO and functionally to the analytics unit. In our case, we put the functional lines in the lead. The reason for that is that we have a whole strategy around global standardization. So that's why we've decided to do that. So our funding still comes from our business. In my case, the HR business, but in the others' cases. But that's under discussion now. So in terms of also the data scientists and data engineering, that will also have to be part of the funding model. Where do we put those FTEs and who holds them? For now, they stay in the businesses. But that is a very important discussion. So in terms of the value and the use cases, obviously there's a hierarchy, right? There is very big value protection use cases in the risk management areas. There's new revenue streams models in the kind of front office. So these are the big ticket items. So what's really important for me is that I make sure that my analytics unit understands the potential value and how we can quantify that. Now, in HR, it's not going to necessarily be dollars. Well, maybe some cost saving, but it can be risk avoidance, and then there's non-financial benefits like engagement, etc. So that's what I meant by we need a crisper value definition, and that's something we're working on. But definitely there's going to be a hierarchy in the use cases. But I am expected to have use cases with quantifiable value on the backlog and delivered this year. Yeah, that's a good question.
Brydie, thank you for the presentation. So we haven't gone as far in Lloyd's as having that formal structure, if you like, that matrix structure, but we are trying to build a community, an analytics community across the enterprise and even a local market in geographic locations. I'm wondering if you've got any thoughts on what we might miss from the benefits, opportunities, the synergies that you're seeing if we only stop at that collaborative approach, that organic version of that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so we've had an analytics strategy as a part of our bank strategy for many years already. And I think it's only now that we're really starting to see that momentum in the communities and the common frameworks because we've made this very deliberate decision to have that centralization or hybrid model. So I think what is really making a difference is the appointment of the chapter leads. So they're technical experts in certain techniques, and they oversee the other data scientists and engineers, and that's really, really helping that come together as a community, and they're arranging all kinds of learning events, et cetera, et cetera. So that's really made a difference. And I think the fact that we come together as a management team and discuss and debate, enablers or blockers also really helps. I think you will miss out on those kind of aspects. But I think you can do a lot organically. Yeah, definitely. But it really, like I said, I hid a little bit in HR. I went to finance analytics and tried to do some collaboration and some common learning. But yeah, it's really ad hoc.
Question over there, I think.
Hi, you mentioned about the community of data scientists and engineers. So do those work across the different functions, like multi-purpose data scientists who can work sometimes on people analytics or risk or finance analytics?
Yeah, so that's something we're exploring because I think there's pros and cons. You need some degree of domain knowledge. I think we think that to be a people data scientist, you need some understanding of how to treat people and behavioral data. But at the same time, we need to be able to exchange data scientists, create career frameworks for them or career paths, and also ramp up when we have a huge project somewhere. So we are looking at creating hubs and exchange of data scientists, but we haven't yet really ascertained A, what they prefer, and B, how we can still maintain those technical expertises that we need. So when I say a technical expertise, like, I don't know, NLP or some graph things for cybersecurity. So we need to strike the right balance as well. And I genuinely don't know if data scientists want to be exchange exchanged like that. I think on a junior level, they really would like to explore lots of different areas and projects, but on a senior level, they're very specialized in some cases. So that's something we have to look at, but it's definitely the aim.
And this central analytics community that you're now part of, and you mentioned that you report functionally into that community, but your direct manager is the CHRO.
Yes.
That community, does it have a head or a lead, or is it just a community of practitioners who
No, there's a chief analytics officer.
And who does that
always
person
chiefs,
report?
right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So there's a head of analytics, yeah. That's a very good question, which was a little bit complex, because theoretically we think they should report to the CEO, because it's such a strategic function. This chief data officer in our company, because sometimes those jobs are combined in a lot of organizations, analytics and data for the full value chain, but ours is separate, so they report into the COO of the bank. So I think the only thing they wanted was to make sure that we are board reporting, because it's so fundamental, but somehow we ended up in risk. But we're not part of the risk function, because that in our organization as a control function has to be completely separate, so we're just reporting into this chief risk officer.
For now, I guess.
I don't know about that one.
Thank you.
You'd have to ask my CHRO.
Thank you for that. It was really interesting. We run an external analytics business, and for me, I'm interested in your last comment, which has just disappeared. But one of the things that we found when we're presenting the tool externally is that HR say, amazing, fabulous, look at this data that I can get. Strategy directors look at it and go, I didn't know that I could get this data, but now I see it, I want more, I want to go deeper. And so that last comment from me about not hiding in HR is really, it kind of mirrors what we're seeing in the market. I want to know whether the achievements that you put up earlier, whether you would do those projects differently now you've got a cross-functional view, or whether you would look at different data in order to get the results that you achieved.
It's a good question. Hindsight's always the easy thing, right? And you always have to put it in the context of how mature we are, how much trust we had from the organization, because that's also grown over time, right? We've also learned what to do. We know how to handle business data now. And I think 3 years ago, we definitely didn't. So would I have done things differently? I would have done some things differently. I think I focused a little bit too much on starting with the data. What data do we have? What can it tell us? Because that's fast. But actually, you should start with the business value and then come back to your data sets. I think that would help us accelerate in HR analytics. We always tackled two types of problems or opportunities. HR, heavy resource HR, we should understand our own business, right? Like recruitment or whatever. And then we also looked at kind of business problems with a heavy people element. So for example, how can we increase sales in the call centers? But I think I would have done more of that. And I definitely would have talked a lot more to my business stakeholders over the last 2 years. So since I joined the HRMT, where we had the maturity and everybody's talking about people analytics now, I could have done a little bit more talking directly with my business leader stakeholders. I kind of left that to the HR directors. Yeah.
Any other questions? Just a quick question for me, actually, just to build on that one, Brydie, is kind of, are you seeing now the appetite increase to kind of infuse people data into some of the other kind of areas that you're now part of that team, where they want to kind of bring people data in and they didn't really think they could do that before? And then kind of to build on what you just said as well, do you now feel you have better license to go and speak to business stakeholders and kind of push that agenda as well?
Yeah, so I think they're really now understanding that they should look at the people part of a problem as well as the business part. So for example, the call centers never thought to use traditional HR data. They use a lot of the call behavior data, shift data, those kind of things, but not the the kind of recruitment data, et cetera, et cetera. So I think they're seeing the value in that now. They don't know how to do it, so that's where we come in. And the second part of your question was
just around your access to the critical stakeholders in the business. Rather than going through HR, do you now feel you have more license to just go direct?
Yeah, definitely. My CHRO is still getting a little accustomed to that. But that's also feedback I had from my HR directors, that are my peers in the management team. They said they just really want me to be more out there discussing with the business, going with them and demonstrating what our capabilities are. Because that also helps them in their work. So yeah.
Yeah, and are you going with them, or do you go with the HR director together, or do you go separately?
A little bit of both. You should never surprise your HR business partners. That's for sure. Quickest way to put yourself out of business. But yeah, so I never surprise them, but generally they're okay with me going. But that's also because I'm in the HR management team, right? So we discuss these things at a strategic level, which also helps.
Excellent. Well, I think we are pretty much out of time. I'll get you to lunch on time. So thank you very much, Brydie, and excellent presentation.
Thanks.